My guest today is Sacha Jak. Sacha is a serial entrepreneur and a true holdco builder who runs multiple companies with over 300 employees. Sacha runs a cleaning company that does commercial property maintenance. And not only that, he runs a business in a totally different industry. And he's very good at putting together deals. Thanks a lot for coming to the Holdco Builder Show.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Let's start with you sharing your background all the way from university.
Well, actually, I didn't go to university. Pretty much when I left school, I got in kind of, everyday type of jobs. And then I suppose, I've always had an interest in business and in marketing and sales and such like. And then it wasn't until about probably the age of, 25, something like that, where I then really got into sales. So I did every type of sales imaginable. I did sort of field sales where we had an appointment setting team and they would make the appointments for us to go and sell. I've done door-to-door sales. I've done telesales. All of them had their own kind of advantages and skills, which, last a lifetime. I'm still using them today. I've always had sort of my own business since then in various things. I've had my own digital marketing agency and various kind of construction related businesses. In the back of my mind, though, I always wanted to acquire businesses. Over the last sort of, 8 to 10 years, I got very close to acquiring businesses. And then it wasn't until a few years ago when I kind of got serious about it. And, obviously, as we go on in this chat, I'm sure I'll be sharing some of those things with you all.
What was the first business you acquired and what inspired you to do that?
It was actually a part ownership of a business. It was an electrical security business. So it did all like CCTV, door entry, electrical gates, fire alarms, that kind of thing. I can tell a little bit in a moment about the network that I joined. I found somebody, we were like-minded, and we got the opportunity. And basically, the key for us was to get control for a less than 50% stake in the business, which seems a little bit counterintuitive and a little bit unconventional. But actually, when you look into that kind of thing, it's done quite often, where you see a much larger company buying a small percentage of a business, and you're thinking, why would they do that? Why would they put millions of pounds into a company they don't have any control over? But it all goes down to the actual shareholders agreement, and there's a few key clauses that we put in there, and then a lot of it goes down to the reserve matters, and then we can have the control whether we have 1% or 100%. And so that's what we did on that one. On that particular deal, the idea was they were doing around about £1 million in revenue, but they weren't making an awful lot of profit. So we made a deal with them. They said, look, okay, give us 20% of the business. We will get you profitable within 90 days. And they're like, really? And I said, yeah. And what we did is, you mentioned earlier about the deal making, etc. So what we said is, if we don't make you profitable within 90 days, then you can have the shares back. And they were like, all right, so it's almost too good to be true. But once we had a meeting, they said, fine. And what we did is we did 2 or 3 key things when we got into that business. The first one was we did a supplier audit. So they were spending 400,000 or 500,000 on, I think so. No, it's about 200,000 or 300,000 per year on like material, equipment, that kind of thing. So we spoke to all the suppliers, and we did an exercise whereby we effectively asked them what the best prices were, and then we collated all the information onto a single spreadsheet, and then we sent that spreadsheet to a couple more suppliers and said, can you beat these prices? And then once we knew that we could beat the prices, we went back to the original supplier and said, well, look, your competitors are offering this. Do you want to have one more go at this? And by doing that, we were saving, depending on what item, it was a minimum of 5%, but as much as 30% on some items, just by doing that. So straight away, that went straight onto the bottom line. We also did a a particular exercise where we were able to save around 15% on the employment costs by having the staff in a particular structure. So we did that. That took about 8 weeks to do, 6 to 8 weeks. So by the end of the first kind of quarter, we'd added somewhere in the region of 60 to 70,000 pounds of profit. So, you know, we were able to keep the shares basically in that business.
Are you still a shareholder today?
Funnily enough, no. Only because the main owner of that business, he had his own ideas what he wanted to do with the cash, and this is something that you know, you learn from every deal that you do. So I went into that a little bit, I suppose we call it green in English. In other words, a little bit naive, tiny bit, not a lot, but enough where we kind of, we should have changed that. We should have done that different. So what basically happened was we said we don't want the control of the bank account, which is, you know, I wouldn't even dream of that now. At the time, we were just wanted to get our first deal, just to kind of prove that our idea or our concept worked. So basically what that owner did, he just used the money for, you know, what he felt was important, even though he had a lot of debt in the business. So we negotiated all the debt to be paid over a period of time. So we had better cash flow, and we also made sure that anything that he bought was from cash, not on credit terms where you have 30 days, because that was what the problem was. When he was getting paid off his customers, he was finding something else to use the money on instead of paying for his suppliers. I think he had about £180,000 worth of debt. So we were able to negotiate that down to about 10,000 repayment, split up amongst all the different creditors. And it was going to take 18 months to clear that. Yeah, the owner didn't follow the plan, basically. And because we didn't invest any money into it, we kind of went, okay, fair enough. You know, we move on. So we kind of left him in the business. And I don't, to be honest, I don't think it's trading anymore, which is a shame. You know, these things happen. So that was on the first deal.
What's next? What did you do next?
Well, actually, we did another little deal while we had, you know, a shareholding in that company. And it was almost like a bolt-on. So it was another electrical security company, a lot smaller, where we were able to acquire that, again, for none of our own money going into the deal. With that one, though, that was again, it proved to us that we could do deals this way, but it's just that the owner of that one was, he wasn't very business savvy. He wasn't very clever when it came to business. I mean, I kind of put the two deals in the same category, but I've got to also be thankful that I had the opportunity and we did the deals. And, you know, our concept of no money down deals, none of our own money, works.
What about the first acquisitions? Like, did you know back then the ways on how to acquire a business by not using your own money, or how this process was for you in the beginning?
I did, yeah. I mean, you know, for probably 30 years, I've known how to do LBOs, leverage buyouts, for those who are unfamiliar. And I got close a couple of times on a couple of things. Even to the extent where I was looking to buy a franchise business, and they'd done the deal with the franchisee, and, you know, we had all the paperwork, the agreement signed, etc. I was going to take over the limited company. We had the funding ready. All the guy had to do was press a green button on an email, and the funding would be in his account, you know, within 2 hours. But the franchisor, they wanted to interview me to see what it was all about, and, you know, they hadn't heard anything remotely similar to what I was talking about. I was talking about, you know, expanding through acquisition, and I would buy up other franchise areas if they wanted to sell them and things. And they couldn't compute this. So in the end, they didn't want to approve me as a franchisee, and so that was a shame. And then another one was a hotel, where, again, I had loads of funding lined up. There was an element of seller financing in there, as well as, you know, property finance, etc. But again, that one, I couldn't get that one over the line. And so what happened was, around COVID time, I took a couple of courses, and it just filled in the knowledge gaps. It's, you know, since then, it's, you know, it's been quite simple. I know how to get deals done based on my previous knowledge and with my new knowledge, but, you know, it doesn't mean that, you know, every deal you should do, which, as I've explained on my first two, they were okay deals. They weren't fantastic deals, but you just prove the concept works.
Before we getting into what you learned from this course, let's talk a little bit about the importance of having control in the business.
Oh yeah.
Can you share a few examples of what you've seen, maybe mistakes you've made or someone else made? Number one, maybe some ideas, maybe even advice for people.
Yeah, I mean, the control is such an important thing, and I would say the number one thing you need control of is the money. So always make sure that if you are going into a deal, become a signatory on the bank account, because if you're not, then with the best will in the world, with the best intentions, like we did on the first deal, you can't kind of legislate for somebody who's just going to do what they want with the money. Even though you might have, the equity control, it doesn't mean you got financial control. So that would be the first thing. If you're going to go into a deal similar to the ones that I explained a moment ago, where you're kind of a part owner, make sure you're getting some kind of consultancy fee from it. We didn't, because we thought that because we were going to convert the, so get it into profit quickly, we could look for a dividend in 3 months. I mean, we were going to follow, or we did follow, the Mike Michalowicz profit first model. You look at the numbers and then you apportion a certain amount that you put into a kind of a completely separate bank account. You split the rest up into a tax part, an operations part, an investment part, or something like that. And then that every 3 months you do have a dividend pot that you can share up a pro forma with or pro rata with the shareholders. That's what we're trying to do. But, again, we in our kind of over eagerness to get the deal and get it moving and things, we weren't really strong on that point. We just said, when the owner said, oh, well, I need, £30,000 for this project, we were like, okay, then yeah, take it from the dividend pot then, instead of actually being a bit harsher and saying, well, you're going to have to generate it from elsewhere in the business. But that was a simple mistake, so we wouldn't make that one again. If money's in a dividend pot, it stays in a dividend pot no matter what. Even if the roof is falling down, it stays there, because otherwise, especially if you're on a no income deal, which we were on, you're not going to get paid. It was an expensive mistake. I mean, I had other forms of income, so it wasn't the end of the world. But even so, the whole point of being an investor is to get that income as well. Always pay yourself first.
So, having such a wide overview of different markets, different industries, why did you decide to get into commercial cleaning business?
Well, it's funny because you're absolutely right. I look at any business, and again, I'll share in a few moments about what other interests I've got. But with the commercial cleaning, I just know that it's the regular income, and there is good profit. It does rely a lot on volume. But once you've got a team of cleaners set up and you've got a good management structure, the business pretty much runs itself, because the people who go out cleaning, they might work part-time. They might be, mums returning to the workplace. They might be retired people. They might be students. So they've got their own reason for doing it. So I'm just humbled every day that people go out and clean. And, if everybody kind of, sorted their own workplace out themselves, then we wouldn't need a cleaning industry. But it's just the way it is. But also there's lots of value-added stuff. We're not just doing commercial cleaning. We're going to do like car park clearing, and when it's snowing and things, we'll put the grit salt on and snow clearing. We can do what's called PAT testing, which is obviously the testing of all the electrical items. We can do general property repairs, do carpet cleaning. We can do pest control, so keeping out rats and flies and that kind of thing. It's a good doorway into a whole range of services that you can offer pretty much any business. And it's one of those industries that nobody wants to be bothered about. No business owner wants to be thinking, right, I need to employ a cleaner to clean our facility every night. So by calling us, a company like ours or one of ours, then they have it sorted. They're all trained. It's fully insured. The right and the best equipment and materials will be used, and it just means there's no hassle of like. One of my kind of selling points when I go into a business is that I say, well, okay, you want to hire someone in-house, great, And then you talk them through about all the payroll taxes, the recruitment costs. What did you do when there's, that person's off sick or on holiday or doesn't turn up, whereas we just take care of all of that for them for one single monthly fee. So, and also they tend to be, I say residual, but it's recurring rather is the right word, recurring revenue. So once you sign someone up, typically it's going to be for 12 months. We've got contracts as long as 7 years, and it's just money that will come in every month. Well, that's why I'm doing that. But I'm looking at any business. My criteria is as long as it's got staff and as long as it's got revenues, I'll look at anything.
You mentioned providing various different services, pest control, carpet cleaning. Do you train your employees, or you're just an acquire a new business?
Yeah, both. But probably more the second we would acquire. I mean, just this week I've been talking to a pest control company, very experienced. He's got 30 years in the industry. He regularly trains staff and subcontractors and things. So he's very keen to come on board because he doesn't really want to run a business. He'd rather just take a good salary and be part of a bigger company and see how big his kind of idea of pest control can be. And, we want it because, it's a great service to add on.
You said you had like 4 meetings with various different businesses this week, and you're hoping to acquire 2 of those. What criteria do you consider when deciding whether to invest or acquire a new business?
Staff and revenues is the first thing, because if there's no staff, you're buying yourself a job. And if there's no revenues, then it unfortunately falls on me or my managers to have to go out and knock on doors and sell. And, why would we need to buy somebody else's business to do that? We should just do it in our own. So really the key thing is I'm looking for the staff and the revenues. If it's got to strip everything away, it's the customer base, the regular contracts that we've got. That's what we're really, really after.
Can we just put it all together? I mean, you said you have decades of experience of putting together deals, but what are the basics? And maybe you can share like the overall process of doing that, starting all the way from beginning and maybe ending when the deal is done, and what you do post acquisition.
Well, first of all, I mean, it depends where you are on the kind of acquisition career line. I mean, as I explained earlier, my first couple of deals were a bit rubbishy, really, but we did them, and it gave us that confidence to say, well, this acquisition stuff isn't that difficult. It's quite simple. It's not easy, but it's quite simple. The steps are the same, and then all of a sudden, by acquiring just one business in the correct way, you've got a year's worth of income just like that. And what did it actually take? Any acquisition shouldn't really take you more than between 5 and 10 hours of actual work, because you will have various criteria. You're right, Mickey. So mine is the staff and revenues. Now, it's what level of staff and revenues. If you've got 10 staff, then or more, then you can imagine that business has actually got some kind of structure in place. So it's good. Anything less than 10, then it tends to be that it's very much an owner-operator. The owner is, driving the van. The owner is knocking on doors. The owner is doing the invoicing every month, the billing and the collections and dropping off supplies and that. The owner does everything. The staff just basically turn up, do their few hours and go home, and that's it. So we like to look for about 10 minimum, because if there's 10 or more, then there's probably 1 or 2 managers within that 10 or some team leaders who could potentially step up into a more leader role. So that's one. And then also, you look at the revenues. If a business is doing there's a few various kind of trains of thought or schools of thought to go for nothing under, 500,000 euros or pounds. It doesn't really, or dollars. It doesn't really matter in this instance, because once you get to that level, you probably will have your 10 staff, or certainly about 8 staff, because if you imagine each member of staff is bringing in is responsible for about £50,000 worth of income, and they're getting paid 20 or 30,000, then that kind of works. To be quite honest, doing a deal for 100,000 revenue company or 1 million or 2 million takes exactly the same time. I mean, we acquired, myself and a business partner, we acquired a 12 million revenue PC company for £2, and it took us about an hour and a half to do. with one single sheet of A4 paper as a deal. So it doesn't really matter. It's very much, I think this is where my sales experience probably comes in, because it's very much a people thing. You've got to find out the number one thing. So you mentioned, what do you do at the beginning? So yeah, you have a good deal sourcing team, and I do that anyway. I've got loads of friends in my network who want me or my team to generate the deal flow for them, and that's what we do. I mean, it's a couple of grand a month, but we can get them between 5 and 15 positive responses each week. That's what we do, and then we've done it in 6 different languages in about 12 different countries. So it doesn't really matter. The principles are the same. You're basically reaching out to people and asking a simple question, and you're going to get it no more than yes. The simple question is, are you interested in an investment or an exit? If you are, let us know. And then all the positive responses we get, we do it. And now, people can do it cold calling, people do it email, people do it via Facebook or LinkedIn ads or outreach. Doesn't really matter. All of those are just a means to an end. The end is you want to speak to a business owner and ask them a question. So whether you contact them, when you're walking down the street, having a, walking the dog or something, and you talk to someone in the gym. I mean, colleagues of mine and friends of mine have done deals in the gym, where they just made a conversation and all of a sudden, they're getting 10% shareholding of a business. But then once you get the positive response, you then need to get onto the call with them. Don't try and second guess, and don't try and think, I'll just look at the company register. So in the UK, it's Companies House, and that'll give a register. But under a certain size, it's very limited information that'll give. The minimum required by law, which is basically a balance sheet. But anybody with an accounting background or a business background will know that a balance sheet is just a snapshot. It's like taking a photo, boom. But next minute it could be raining, it could be really sunny. But on that picture it was snowing. So you don't know where that business is. So what I do is once, my team have got me some positive responses, I then just pick up the phone. I ask to speak to whoever has responded to our outreach, and I just asked them, I said, the first thing I asked them once I've introduced myself is, what prompted you to respond? What was your motivation? And that's enough to get the conversation going. And by asking them a what, where, how, when question, but really it's a what and a how you should be asking, not a why, but the what prompted you to respond, and then you get their motivation. They could tell you, and it could be a couple of minutes explanation. They've been in the business 30 years. They're getting tired and they want to move on, or the wife wants to retire and move to Spain, and do you want to spend more time with the grandchildren? Whatever it is, you just get on that and get on a personal level. Tell them a little bit about your story, why you're buying businesses. Most of the time, just doing what we do in this kind of group that we're in, Mickey, are just we're building up a holding company in the group. That's enough for some people. That's all you need to hear. That you're not here just to steal the business and con them or scam them or anything. You've actually got a bigger picture. So once they hear that, it's like, oh, okay then. And they just carry on. I've got a list of like 20, 30 questions that I ask on pretty much every call. And, anybody who becomes like a deal flow client of ours, they get that as standard anyway, because I want them to do something with what we generate. And if they follow the same process that I do, good things ought to happen. Then you have a good conversation. These first conversations, these discovery calls, can take anywhere from sort of 10 minutes to 2 hours. And even then, you could probably go on for another 2 hours because you're getting on so well. I tend to find the longer they go on, the better. Anything under sort of 20 minutes, and you're still just two strangers. More than 20 minutes, half an hour, 40 minutes, an hour, then you're more kind of, each other a little bit more. I mean, I had one, you mentioned earlier about the 4 people that have, one of them, I was on the phone for about 19 minutes. And she was really interested, and she was telling me about how great her business was and saying she's got a business plan. She said, send me an email with an NDA, non-disclosure agreement, and I'll send you the business plan. I was like, yeah, okay. It was her that offered me. So I sent her our standard email, which asked for a few key things. I mentioned the business plan because she mentioned it to us. And our NDA is really just 7 or 8 lines to say we're not going to share the information and that kind of, because that's basically what an NDA is. I remember once I got an NDA from a business. It was turning over. The revenue was £150,000 a year, and it was a 38-page NDA document. And I was like, "Are you serious? 38 pages?" So I just didn't bother with that because it's silly. Because you can only imagine further down the line if you did actually do a deal, you'd end up spending £6,000 on legal fees when I could do that deal on the back of an envelope. It doesn't need to be that complicated. But anyway, going back to the process. So you do the NDA. This particular one, she just then replied saying, "Oh, I'm not doing an NDA via an email." So again, just leave it. Because I've got that much deal flow, that much deal origination going on, I don't care. I burn a few. Now, some would say, "Oh, that's irresponsible," but I don't care because I haven't got time. Life's too short. I could spend an hour, 2 hours warming that person up and still not get the deal done. So I'd rather speak to people who actually want to speak to me and want to play the games by the simple rules. So once we then do the initial call, we then do a bit of a shopping list information. So last 3 years accounts, the official accounts, not just the abbreviated or simple accounts. We want the management accounts. We want ideally last 12 months bank statements, the last 12 months tax returns, an anonymous staff list with start date and salaries, and then also anonymous client list with contracted value per month and how long each contract lasts. And that'll give us a good idea of the business then. I also throw in there, say, by the way, if you could wave a magic wand, that's the question. That's a phrase I learned in one of the groups that I'll probably share in a moment. But if I could wave a magic wand, what would you like, Mr. Owner? What would you like as your, thing? And they'll tell me, "Oh, well, I want £1 million." Right, okay then. Well, I won't know that until I got all the information. And then it's up to us to then be creative in the deal structure to be able to give him his £1 million. Now, it won't be £1 million in one big bag on day one across the desk. Never is. SMEs are never sold like that, in my experience. There's always an element of what we call deferred consideration, which is payment over a period of time. Yes, they are going to get day one money. Of course they are. But there's ways which we can talk about how to generate that day one money. But a lot of it is going to be over a period of time. And then there's even if they give the common one, "Oh, next year is going to be the best year ever." Great, we'll build that into the numbers then. If next year is the best year ever, we'll give you a share of that. So we call that element the earn-out. And that's a good way of putting all the kind of distance stuff between what it's really worth today and what they want. Just shove it in the earn-out category and say, if the business hits X, Y, and Z by ABC date, you'll get your £500,000 extra or whatever. And that's what it is. Something else I would say as well is when you're in the deal, it's yes, you've got to kind of run at the same pace as they are. So if they're quick with the information flow, then you try and be quick. If they're slow, they take 2 or 3 days. You take 2 or 3 days. But don't let it go further than that. Give them a call. "Are you still interested?" It's no problem if you're not. We've got plenty of other opportunities on our desk. But, I wanted to give you the courtesy of a call to see, if this is something and one of the great things that I think I learned, was it Chris Voss, Never Split the Difference? Or it might have been one of those. It might have even been Oren Claff. One of the things I like to do is just a single line email saying, Have you given up on the idea of us acquiring your business? ? Regards, Sacha. And it's amazing. Just that directing. "Oh no, I haven't given up. I was this and it's that," and you're back in the game then.
You so smoothly went over a very small fact that you acquired a PC firm which did 12 million in revenue and you got it for £2. Can you share a little bit more about this? Let me know how much you
Of course, I'll share a lot more because it just goes to show that it doesn't matter whether it's a small business or a large business. It's a people business, effectively, what you're in or what we're in. And it's what the person on the other side of the desk wants. And what happened there was it was actually a colleague in the same network as me. And his son, I actually helped this guy acquire his first business. I basically mentored him and coached him. And he was able to buy a business using my contacts, my finance contacts, and, you know, the methods that we learned and things like that. And, you know, he was that thankful. He said, next deal that I get a word on, I want you in it, Sacha. And I went, yeah, okay. Just thinking he was being nice and just saying it to, you know, be generous. And a couple of months later he did. He called me up and said, I've got this deal. It's a PC, gaming PC. So for those who don't know, it's for video game players. And, you know, these items can go from sort of €400 up to €15,000, depending on what, you know, lights and graphics cards and components you have in it, and processing power, etc., and design. And so he said, okay, he was saying it was where his son worked, and the owner was basically going to call in the administrators, the liquidators, because he'd had enough. He was having high revenue, but he'd also built up around 1.2 million in debt. And I think he'd probably taken quite a lot of cash out of the business as well. He had a really nice house, apparently, and a really nice car, but, you know, who knows where we got the money for that. But anyway, you know, so we had a little chat. My colleague went to see him and went and sat in his kitchen, his very nice kitchen. They, you know, had a coffee, and then he got me onto a Zoom call, and he said, right, okay. The owner just wanted out. The pressure was too much. He'd built this business up from a single room in his house to like this big, you know, 10,000 square foot facility, manufacturing, you know, thousands of PCs every year. And he couldn't handle it anymore. It was just too much. He had agencies for this and agencies for that, and he had loads of staff, and it was just, you know, every penny he was getting in was he was kind of overtrading, I would imagine you'd call it. Certainly trading insolvently, I would, in my opinion. I'm not saying legally he was, but potentially he was. But we had a little chat, and we just said he just wanted to hand the keys to somebody and say, have it. So I just said to him, okay, then, what's the share capital in the business? He said, what's that? So we had a look at it when he formed the company, you know, 8-9 years earlier, and his share capital was £2. So we said, okay, if we give you your £2 back for the business, will you let us control? Will you let us have it? And he went, yes. All right then. So I created a one-page document on a single side of A4 to basically effect that transfer. We gave him the £2. My colleague was in his kitchen, gave him the £2 there and then, you know, 2 single coins. There you go, John, thank you very much. Everyone signed, and that was it.
Often do you see deals like this happen?
Well, they are out there for sure. I mean, I've taken on another what we call them distressed businesses. I've taken on another one in the summer, but it's almost like a passion project, that one, because it's with my brother and it's a restaurant, etc. But there's a lot of them out there. You know, people coming back after COVID, they haven't got the energy anymore, or, you know, we're having high inflation and high interest rates and things like that, and they don't want to battle again. So there's a few deals like that out there. Sometimes, though, you just got to be bold and say, okay, how much do you want to avoid the pain of having to run this business? There's a lot of people out there who will happily give you the key and say, okay, you have it, because you've had enough. That's what happens. So with that deal, then what we did is, and it did happen as simple as I've just described it. So don't think that I'm brushing over things or keeping over. No, that's exactly how it happened. And so then what I did is I then went up a few days later, and I sat in one of the offices. He had a really nice facility up in the north of England, really nice. Apparently they'd only been in there a year or so, and it was just beautiful, really nice. Anyway, I sat in an office with his head of purchasing, and we called up all the suppliers, and we said, you know, we told them, look, the company's just been taken over. We're now going to go through a restructuring exercise. Would like to carry on buying from you because you've looked after us, you've given us lots of credit, but we can't give you all the money that we owe you right now. So can we pay you over a period of time? And yeah, most of them agreed. But what we did is we actually sent a letter as well. That was a little bit of a cat. If you know the phrase carrot and stick, it's like if you're riding a donkey, you know, or a little horse, you have a stick with a carrot hanging down the front, and so the horse is always wanting to eat the carrot, but you've got a stick in the other hand to give it a whack on the leg if it's not going quick enough. So it was a carrot and stick approach that we did with the suppliers and said, look, if you don't agree to this deal that we're offering you, then what will probably happen is we will have to fold the company, put it through what's called an administration, and you'll end up getting, 5p in the pound if you're lucky, 5% of what you're owed if you're lucky, because the business can't sustain it. So that's what we did. And it was going quite well. We extracted the brand. We have a process which we call never go broke. So that's to extract all the good stuff out of the business as soon as possible. Just leave the operating company as it is. Roland Fraser has a good kind of schematic with this in a lot of his materials. But basically, the operating company is a selling machine, but everything else after that is not actually in there. So the brand, make sure the brand's in a different jurisdiction, a different country, is owned by, we got brands in, some of these anonymous American states, but you could have it in Dubai, Free Zone or whatever. Have the brand owned and registered. Like the trademark can be registered in the EU and the UK, which it is, but the ownership is offshore. That means that if there is ever a claim, then it's just going to complicate matters for whoever wants to make that claim, because they're not just doing it in the UK or the EU, they're having to do another jurisdiction that they don't know anything about. So it's just those levels of confusion and whatever that you want to put in there. But also it's a safety mechanism so that the brand is safe. Take the staff out of the business, put them into another entity called a limited liability partnership, which probably, it could take me an hour to explain everything about that. But essentially the staff are leased to the main operating company. And then also the actual manufacturing side, have that into another entity. So when operating company, which does all the selling, gets an order in, then it's going to pay a little bit to the staff company, and it's going to pay a little bit to the brand company, and it's going to pay a little bit to the manufacturing company. So the actual, and any bills and whatever are in that operating company. So if anything happened, sales went down or whatever, it doesn't damage anything else. You can just start up another operating company because the brand's already safe, the staff are safe, the manufacturing is safe. It's quite an advanced technique, really, but it's so valuable, so valuable.
A lot of the stuff you mentioned, yes, it's advanced, but some of the stuff when it comes to sales, when it comes to creating offers, it seems like you're extremely creative. I'm not sure, is it just the experience? One example you gave me.
Out and tried it. I'm a big fan. I mean, I've mentioned Roland Fraser. He's great at acquiring businesses. Jay Abraham, for those who don't know, is a marketing expert. And he has, dozens and dozens of ways of doing deals and selling and marketing. And if you go to abraham.com, there's bags of resources there. Abraham.com/50 Shades of Jay. And there's loads of free material that he's charged thousands of dollars for in there. And it's just, the first time you hear it, you're thinking, oh, this is good. He's very eloquent. But then actually when you start looking into it and you're thinking, wow, that's amazing. And, you start using these things and you never look back. And I mean, I've been a fan of Jay Abrahams for nearly 30 years. He's almost my go-to. And then there's another guy who I've mentioned a few times, a guy called Jeremy Harbour. And he is actually the course that I did back in COVID times. And that filled in a few blanks for me. And it really got me going. The raw information you get on the Harbour Club, he does regular kind of online Harbour Club events, virtual training courses. They cost $6 or $7 but it's, you make that back on your first deal. But Jeremy Harbour, check him out. He's just really, really good. The other good thing about that is the Harbour Club, which is a network. So once you join, you get membership for life, and there's just other deal makers in there, and it's just good. And what you're building, Mick, on Twitter, there is kind of, hold code twit out there. That's what you need to do when you're in this business. Even though we know what we're doing, or we kind of, we know we got the knowledge and we know where to get the knowledge, to 99.9% of the people out there, they haven't got a clue. But it's quite funny because I was somewhere in the last couple of days and I was talking to somebody and they said, what do you do? And I just said, I just invest in companies. I buy companies. I've got this company, I've got that company, blah, blah, blah. And he went, oh, so you do side hustles? I'm like, is that what you call them now? a side, if you want to call it that. I mean, it's not side, if that's the phrase nowadays, but that's what people who've got side hustles, they might have an Airbnb, they might have a couple of Airbnbs and think that they're the next Conrad Hilton or something like that. But this is a great phrase from Jamie Harbour. We are running the last 100 meters of a marathon. We're not doing the startup. We're not having to get the customers in. We're not doing anything. We're just coming in at the last minute and acquiring a business that's already set up, that's already been established 4, 5, 10 years. And it's got regular customers. It's got the staff base. And then we just acquire it in an afternoon. And then we just, 10x our yearly income. And then we go and do it again next week and next month. It's the most fun you can have with your clothes on, I believe. But the key is not to risk any of your own capital. I'm looking to acquire another business, and I have a good commercial finance broker, and he's come back with me from a particular lender or funder, but they want me to bet the whole house. They want me to put cross-company guarantees and borrow it from there and personal guarantees. I'm thinking, it's not worth it. The business, they want 200,000 for it, but this lender wants me to do cross-company guarantees and a personal guarantee for £200,000 when the business itself can pay for it in 2 or 3 years, no problem, just that cash flow. So, you do come across that. So that's why I say it's simple to do deals, but not always easy, because sometimes some of the funding sources can be a bit awkward. I mean, in the UK, a big one is, we all know the concept of limited liability. The whole point of limited liability is to limit your liability or your cost or your investment to that box. That's it. But what a lot of lenders do, pretty much every lender now in the UK, is they want a personal guarantee. So if the business goes south and it goes bust, they want to be able to come after you for the money. And it's like, well, that defeats the object of a limited liability company. That's a challenge. Now, the rule of thumb is you don't do personal guarantees, but if the deal needs to be done, the good thing is they don't always like it, but banks and funders, you can negotiate with them within reason. Some of them are like, no, this is how we do it, and there's no change, like maybe a credit card company or something like that. But even then, you can go to them and say, I want to, you might owe them a load of money and say, I'm going to cut up the card and never use it again. And then all of a sudden, you can drop your interest rate, from 30% to 25% or something. That's a rare example on a personal level. But in business, because it's so competitive, the funding, you can actually say to them, you want a personal guarantee? Okay, then fine. If you're insisting that you need a personal guarantee, but instead of 100% guarantee, how about a 5% guarantee? So I've demonstrated my kind of commitment to the deal, because I'm putting, say I'm borrowing 200,000, I'm gonna lose 10,000 on this deal. So it's a significant amount of money to anybody, really, whether you're a billionaire or a secretary or something. So I have negotiated down PGs on a couple of deals, but it's a very mooted risk. We call it mooted risk. In other words, there's not much risk. I am literally the last of a long line of things that would have to happen for them even to knock on my door and say, we want our money back. There's credit insurance. It's actually for a factoring or invoice discounting method. And I'm on like a 25% personal guarantee, but which is worth about, I think, 50 grand. Well, if I really, really had to, I could get 40,000 together, not an issue. But there's loads of different kind of checks and balances and things that they would have to do before they even come to me. So, as I say, it's a fairly mooted risk. But on the deal where, you're acquiring a business, you want to try and get the deal made just within that business itself, within the assets. And that's how I've acquired businesses up to now. I've used a little bit of money from another business to put into it, and then the rest is seller finance. If you can't do a deal, you just move on, because as I say, I get opportunities every day. So I'm not bothered.
What about you mentioned the sales and marketing and Jay Abraham? How has this shaped your business or shaped your view on business? Because one of the offers you made, I really like this one when it comes to the cleaning company, where others were bidding on price. You pretty much added a bonus. Can you talk more about this?
Yeah. So one of Jay Abraham's principles is don't commoditize yourself. Don't be a tin of beans. A steak is a steak is a steak, and a tin of beans is a tin of beans, and so on. So what you need to do is differentiate yourself. So the way to do that is when you're, especially in the cleaning business, and I'm forever telling my managers, they don't always get it. Nobody's perfect, but most of the time they do. And basically what I say is, okay, so say this client, it might be an office block, and the building manager is going for 3 quotes. Standard practice in anybody purchasing, always go for 3 quotes, and he can do it. But the danger of that is, it's going to be like a race to the bottom. So it's just going to be price driven. So they don't actually respect you as a company. They don't care about you really as a company. They're just going for the lowest number. They don't care if you're actually losing money on the contract and you're hoping they'll give you extra work. Then they don't care if you're making £1 a week profit or something like that. They're not bothered. As a result, what I do, or as a consequence of that, I always add something extra in. So I'll give them a kind of a price for what they're looking for. Maybe they want a daily clean, five people, 5 hours a day, or 5 people, 3 hours a day, 5 days a week. So yeah, if you're looking at it on the pure hours basis, 5 times 3 times 5, which is 75 hours. And then, you give them an hourly rate. So it might be £20 an hour or something. And out of that, you're going to pay them a wage. You've got your taxes to pay for. You've got holiday cover to pay for. You've got a management fee in there because they're going to have to be supervised. You've got a head office fee because obviously who's going to deal with the payroll and all of that kind of thing. So £20 an hour is kind of cheap. And that's what, now if somebody else comes along and says, oh, we're going to charge you £19 an hour, £18 an hour, guess who the client goes to? Them. So what I'll do is, I'll give them a price, what I'm happy with. And usually I don't go less than £20 an hour. There's bigger companies than ours that go for £30, £35 an hour. Still pay the staff the bare minimum, but they've got so many levels of management. But what they do is they will add additional services, or they will trademark a particular service offering. So it might be, we're the green cleaners, so we'll give you, and they specify, even though every other company might offer the same, they will actually specify in their contract, we will only use sustainable and environmentally friendly products in the cleaning. We will also do a 6-monthly deep clean, which is cleaning everything when nobody's in the building. We'll do a 3-month carpet clean. So you add in 2 or 3 other services for the same price. So then when they put a like for like, it's like, oh, well, they're charging us £18 an hour, but are they actually going to do a deep clean? Are they actually going to do the green products? We don't know. So all of a sudden, you made yourself different. You've taken it away from being just a pure price-driven commodity to actually something different. And what you've got to do as well is, emphasize things like, a cleaning audit. So one of your managers will go in every month and do a walk around the facility or the building with the building manager and check everything, literally going along, picture frames going like that, oh, there's some dust, and literally everything, making sure the client's happy. So you build that into your price as well. And always offer something hard with something soft. So what we do is soft services. So we said, what else could we offer them? So we might offer them a snow clearing service or something like that. We talked last week when we met in London about what Apple do. Apple don't just sell you an iPhone. They'll try and sell you a care package for £279 for 3 years. That's something soft, and you might not even use that. You'd have to throw the phone on the floor a few times for it to actually damage it, and then to be able to say, oh, I want to take you off on that, on the care plan. But it's that kind of thing where you can get extra money out of the client and actually giving them. It's all down to selling as well. You've got to make it an advantage to them to have it. But in the cleaning thing, yeah, it's very much a case of overdoing and overselling what you're going to do, because it is unfortunately very price driven. People don't respect it. They did during COVID. We were inundated. We had phone calls every day. Can you come and clean opposite? Can you come and do this? Can you do? But now COVID's gone, or it's a lot less than it was, and the focus isn't on COVID much anymore. It's kind of like people don't really care. We're back to, we don't really care about the cleaners anymore. It's just the necessary pain that we have to deal with.
You've done obviously a lot of deals, making a lot of offers. Could you share like a remarkable success story or achievement which you are like extremely proud of?
Probably the PC company. I'm proud of every deal. They're all my kind of babies, and I like them all pretty much equally because they're all different. I suppose the PC company was great because it was almost ticked so many boxes. It was a brand, and I'm very much brand focused, so I know I can do something with that brand, and I could take it into other areas. And I was the only one in the conversation who had that kind of thought or forethought or that kind of idea. Everyone else kind of came after me about talking about the brand, but I knew straight away that brand could be on cups, it could be on bags, it could be on t-shirts, it could be on hats, it could be on car seat covers, it could be on anything. Very thankful that that I do have control of that brand and I'm able to kind of explore that. We actually did a deal within that PC company. We did a deal with the Manchester United footballer Casemiro. He played for Real Madrid as well. That was a good deal. We did with sporting teams as well. I mean, they're all good. They're all good. But what happens is, as soon as I've done a deal, it's like, is that it? It's like you don't think you want to run down the street going, yeah, the first one maybe, but you don't really. You're just kind of like, yeah, okay then.
So here comes my next question. What's the future for Sacha Jak?
Well, at any one time, I don't think I'll ever be 100% satisfied. That's just in my nature. And I can remember conversations I had like 20, 25 years ago where I remember somebody distinctly saying, you're always striving. You're always wanting something that's just out of reach. I mean, in my head, I've not even done 1% of what I want to do.
You're always humble and you find time when I'm sending you a question or something. But how has entrepreneurship and buying businesses in particular changed your life and changed your family life?
It just means that in a very real and also conceptual way, I'll never be poor again. As long as I've got a breath and I've got my mind, my mental, ability, even if I had no arms or legs, I could still do deals that I take with me every day. And I just, you're only on earth for one amount of time. Just make it happen and have the best life you possibly can. And just remember that it's all a game. There's very few things that are really important in this world, and they're really just your family and your health. Everything else, a customer who's giving you a hard time, so what? You can't get a funding package together for a deal, so what? An owner of a business agrees to a deal and then drops out the last minute, so what? It doesn't matter. There's always, you go into every day with a mindset of abundance. This isn't the last deal I'm ever going to work on, the one I'm working on today. There'll be, as I said earlier, I can get like if you said to me, Mick, you know what, I want to look at, I don't know, let's think of a business, furniture makers in France. I will be able to, for Monday, have you leads of furniture makers who we've reached out to and asked the question, are you interested in the investment or an exit? And that's it. And you'll be getting them every day for basically ever, because all would happen is if we spoke to every furniture manufacturer in France in the next few months, guess what? We'll just go back to the beginning and ask them all again, because of what Jay Abraham talks about, the moving parade of life. Things happen, circumstances, people get ill, people have kids, people get tired, people die, people just fall out of love to get divorced or whatever. What is true today might not be true in 6 months when you ask the same question of the same person. I mean, so, it's, I can get anyone, deal flow from anywhere. And I always just have that abundant mindset. Sometimes though, when you're in the thick of a business, yeah, you do think, oh, this is the only business I know. Well, don't, any business, the fundamentals are the same, spend less than you bring in. That's it. That's business. Spend less than you bring in.
So good. Let's wrap up with the famous 5. How old are you?
50.
Favorite book?
Bible, but then also, every other kind of book stems from that one book, and it's, whether you're a believer or not, it doesn't really matter, because, well, you should be a believer, but that's, a whole different story. But everything else comes from that, a trial, and being nice to people, and just reading the book of Proverbs is, that's a great, map for life. But other than that, there are other books that I look at. Anything by J. Abraham really is good. But then anything by Chet Holmes. Jeremy Harbour's got a good book out called Go Do Deals. Actually, Roland Fraser and J. Abraham have just brought this book out. Actually, it's called, I don't know if you can see it. It's called Business Wealth Without Risk. And this has encapsulates most of what I talked about, but there's quite a lot that it doesn't. It doesn't give agreements. It doesn't, but it's a great grounding for sure.
Next one. Married, single, kids.
Married, son.
What car do you drive?
Drive a couple Mercedes and a Hyundai.
What's the best investment advice you've ever got?
One is the richest person I know who's worth like hundreds of millions and his business turns over £1 billion and things like that. I remember, and he's the most humble man. If he, walked in the room now, you wouldn't know anything about him because he just wears normal clothes, etc. And it's just normal. And I remember him telling me years ago about hiring. Now, he's very much sales driven, a bit like me. Any business should be sales driven, but he's a bit like me, sales driven. And he said when you're hiring anybody, a salesperson, you give them 3 months. First month is all about just product knowledge, getting to know the business. Second month, they'll be shadowing someone. And then by month 3, if they're not selling, I mean, he's in the car show, he's in like car sales. So he says, if I've got £10 million worth of stock at any one time, if they can't sell a car from that amount of cars, then, something's severely wrong. So he gives them 3 months. And he says, you can put them on a salary of £50,000 a year, but really, how much is it costing you? 3 months' salary. That's all. It's not costing you £50,000. And he said, by doing that, it's far cheaper than going to university for 3 years and spending all that money you could actually just spend it. And it's like, so that's something that stuck in my mind. Don't be afraid to spend money. And what's the worst that can happen? And again, I go back to what I said earlier. There's very thing, you lose some money on a deal. So what? You can make it. But money is like water. There's always some of it around somewhere. You just got to go and find it. And do you want a bucket today, or do you want a teaspoon or a spoon of water? Doesn't really matter. And people get hung up. You can't. It's a cliche, but you can't take it with you when you die or whatever. So just look at it as a way of keeping score, and that's it. I had this conversation in my network where I keep going back to this example because it's just one that springs to mind. But the lead generating, right? Now, I get people who haven't done a deal yet. I remember back when I was in sales, the number one thing I wanted more than anything was a warm lead. I don't ever want to cold call anybody. It's just soul destroying because you're just going to get 99 no's before you get to the yes. You could spend a week on the phone and not get a yes. And I've done it, so I know. The only people who don't get deals done is the ones who don't, speak to people. We can all have the knowledge. We can all, and it is in this internet age, it is very much a situation where people will just look at, you can get all the knowledge you ever want in the world is online. And now with AI as well, with ChatGPT, Claude and Bard, it's even more so. You can train someone to do a lot of the thinking for you. Or you can train a machine to do a lot of the thinking for you. It's not the end of the world if you invest, but you've got to basically follow that up. You're not Gordon Gekko. You're not, Bill Gates or something where you can just give money and something happens. You do have to do a little bit of work until you get to a certain level. So, follow your own money. So if somebody, go back to it, if somebody paid me for lead generation, they've got to do their bit, which is follow up. So a lot of the thing is just take action, I suppose, is another piece of advice. Take action and don't be afraid to spend money. And if you do spend money and it doesn't work out, guess what? You've learned. I mean, I've spent money this week where I'm thinking, ugh, that was quite a lot of money. I've spent a load of money on Facebook ads, for example, in one business. I'm a despondent. I'm a little bit sad. I don't like spending money, but, I don't consider I've lost money. I just know that particular thing, the way that I did it didn't quite work. So now guess what? It'll make me sharper. And I'll then look, right, okay, who is doing better than me? And I'll go and take a piece of their cake. What are they doing? And try and copy or be inspired by what they're doing. So don't try and reinvent the wheel. Borrow from what's already out there. I mean, like in the restaurant business with my brother, we're not just putting an ad out there and hoping. No, we're looking, what are Domino's doing? What are McDonald's doing? What are, Spargo in the US? And what are all these big brands doing? They've spent, you can guarantee they've spent millions of pounds getting their branding, getting their offer, right? So why don't you, again, it goes back to running the last 100 yards of a marathon. Why don't you just, they've done all the hard work. Okay, so if we have an offer similar to a McDonald's, in, I don't know, a chicken restaurant, for example, and how they present it, guess what? We'll probably make some sales. It's not rocket science.
This has been a masterclass, to be honest. This has been a masterclass. So where can people find you if they want to ask more?
They can email me, uniquetreble@gmail.com. That's unique treble as in 3, not travel as in going on a plane. So uniquetreble@gmail.com. You can also find me, and I'm kind of anonymous actually in various places. But if you look on Twitter, it's unique_treble. I'm sure you'll point them in the right direction, Mick, if anyone asks. But I'm open. I'll look at a deal. If anyone's got a deal that they're thinking of, or they know of a business that could be, I'll give 10, 20 minutes of my time to somebody to go over the fundamentals of moving a deal forward. It's not an issue. I'm actually interested. I do want to do other deals in other companies. I know we're talking about a particular thing maybe in the Baltic states about facilities management and cleaning companies, because it's just a no-brainer of a business, really. And if you know how to do it in one country, you can do it in every country in the world. But I'm interested in any business. So if there's anybody watching or listening, first of all, thank you for getting this far, because we've been on quite a while. Just reach out and I'll happily talk and give you my kind of learned opinion.
Perfect. Thanks a lot for doing this.
No problem. Thanks for having me again.